Story time of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Yes, biological brother, same mom, same dad. So a little background information, my mom passed away when I was 2, my dad is currently in jail, and I live with my grandma. So at the time, I was 14, about to be 15, he was 17, about to be 18. So how this all started is one day I was at the baseball game with my friends, and he happened to be there. I was fangirling over this boy. Like, I saw him, and I was like, I'm going to marry him one day. I was feeling a little bold, so I went over and got his snap. And then I figured out that he had the same last name as me, and I was like, dude, that is dope. My exact words were, now I don't have to change my last name when we get married. So we hung out the rest of the baseball game, and I was starting to fall in love with this kid. Like, his smile, his laugh, I talked about him to my friends the rest of the night, and me and him started snapping for a while. So we started to hang out a lot. We may have hooked up a couple times, but I had to keep this all secret from my grandma because she forbid I dated somebody. So fast forward a couple weeks, we start dating. Months and months and months go by. Our 9 months come, and I finally tell my grandma. And this is where it gets bad. I'm running out of time, like, for part 2. Part 2 of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Continuing on with the story, me and his 9 months were coming up. Also, he was adopted and his foster family absolutely adored me, so they were okay with me keeping it a secret from my grandma. They were the ones to help me tell her. So not only were our 9 months coming up, but his birthday was the next day. And he told me the only thing that he wanted for his birthday was for my part of the family to know that we were together. So one day I sat down at the table and I was like, hey, I think it's about time that I tell you. And then I told her everything and she asked for a picture. I showed her a picture and she was like, "Aw, he's cute. How old is he?" At first she was okay with everything, and the age difference she was kind of iffy about, but then she accepted it. Then she asked his name. I told her his name, she said last name, gave her the last name, and she flipped out. She took my phone, didn't give me an explanation, and told me that if I ever spoke to him again, I would never be allowed out of the house. Finally, after she calmed down, she came to tell me that he was my brother. She asked if we had did anything, and I of course said no, but yes, we did. I'm running out of time, like, for part 3 of how I found out that I was dating my own brother. Continuing on with the story, I didn't believe her not one bit, but then I realized the reason why I was attracted to him is because he kind of looked like me. No, I'm just kidding. All jokes aside, I did start to question because everybody did say we looked like brother and sister. I asked her for proof. She didn't have any actual proof that we were brother and sister, but then everything started adding up. I told him, and then he didn't believe me until he asked his foster parents who his parents were. Mind you, me and him never spoke about our real parents because we both told each other that we were uncomfortable speaking about it. Then we did find out that we had the same exact mom and dad. Me and him were both in absolute shock and had no idea what to do. I mean, we kind of were in love with each other, you know? So we decided to just date for a couple more months. I had to tell my grandma that we broke up and we were just hanging out and getting to know each other as brother and sister. But then we both decided that we needed to break up because it started to get a little weird. We never told absolutely anybody about this but my grandma. His foster parents didn't even know that we were siblings. And to this day, me and him do still flirt.
And I have always been mistaken as twins. I'm 19 and she's 16, but we had the same height, skin tone, and similar voice. She also has a habit of being a copycat, from the way I dress to hobbies, even piercings. I know it's cute if you look at it from the outside, but sometimes it gets annoying. Like, yeah, we are quite close too, but why does she always happen to pick up everything I pick up? One afternoon, I was tidying up some costumes in my college showroom and found a rather cute brown and pink wig. It looks like a mushroom. I put it on, think it looks rather funny, so I snapped a picture and posted it to my Instagram. I received a text from my sister asking if I really cut my hair. I didn't mention it was a wig. While I somewhat have a feeling that she might copy that too, I lied and replied yes. I came home that weekend and lo and behold, my sister emerged with the same silly brown and pink bob cut, except this one is on her permanent hair. She was surprised that I arrived with my hair still long, then realized that I liked her. She was furious that she had to cut that silly hairstyle because she thought I had it. Our parents think that it's a really bad joke and wanted me to cut my hair too to make it up to her. So am I the asshole for telling my sister I cut my hair when I really didn't? Your mother-in-law is the absolute worst person I've ever met in my life. I'm 30 years old and my boyfriend is 31 and we've been together for 8 months. He's the sweetest and most caring man I've ever met in my life, but the biggest surprise is when I met his mother. I'm a natural redhead, so when we sat down for dinner, she asked me if my parents had the same color hair. And then she proceeds to ask me, does the carpet match the drapes? I looked over to my boyfriend who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. And when I didn't respond back, she said, don't worry, I'll ask my son about it later. She then went on to attack my appearance and said my hair was too curly and I really needed to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. And when I lost my appetite, she told me it was a good thing that I'm watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was my first meeting with this woman, and as soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. I told my boyfriend I needed some time. He went into apology overload, and this started by sending me flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages. He said he spoke with his mom and promised this would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Later, he invited me to come to a family birthday party. I met more of his family and they were amazing people. His mother was avoiding me and I had no problem with that. I went to grab something out of my purse when I noticed it was missing. I went and asked my boyfriend and he quickly began to help me look for it. He got this strange look on his face and he quickly went upstairs where I heard yelling and screaming. He came back down with my purse in hand. Turns out his mom took my purse so that she could take my license to run a background check on me. I thought it would be best to avoid all family functions until he insisted I come to a family reunion. I sat at a table with his sister and his cousins and his mom sat down as well. One of his cousins looked like my 12-year-old niece and I showed her a picture and that's when his mom began to laugh. She told me she hopes that if me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. And that's when I blew up on her like a volcano. She tried to play the victim and said I was a horrible woman. When my boyfriend decided it was time for us to leave and she saw something in his hand, she looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little bitch," and lunged for my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box and threw it down the storm drain. Turns out he was planning on proposing and got the heirloom from his grandma. Fiancé went no contact with his mom and that only lasted about a week before she came banging on our door trying to apologize. When I let her in, that's when all hell broke loose because she saw our Christmas tree. She began screaming that I was trying to convert her son to Christianity and that I was just a little whore who was trying to ruin her family. She started running towards my Christmas tree and began tearing off every ornament and throwing them and leaving them smashed on the floor. I have many childhood and family ornaments on my tree that were very precious to me that were all smashed during her rampage. I had to grab her and physically drag her away and she was punching me several times and biting my hand. I had to call the cops. She told the police I was an intruder in her son's apartment and I attacked her. After my fiancé came home and he was siding with me, that threw her into another rampage. When the police asked if I wanted to press charges, I looked at my fiancé and he was conflicted. I had to do what made me feel safe, so I decided to press charges. She was taken to the hospital and then arrested upon her release. Him and the rest of his family want me to drop the charges against his mom since I have a restraining order. He said he'll stand by me and my decision, but doesn't want to see his mother go to prison. I'm so confused and conflicted on what. I've always had a good relationship with my mother-in-law up until I was pregnant. My husband's side of the family hasn't had a girl born in the past 100 years. So when everyone found out I was pregnant with a girl, no one believed me. Everyone was so shocked when it was announced that most of them denied it up until the moment she was born. And that's when the horrible comments started. Whenever my husband wasn't around, my mother-in-law would make snarky comments like, "I wonder where she got that nose. It's definitely not my son's." I never told him and let everything slide because she's older and she's my mother-in-law. But when I was pregnant with baby number 2, and yes, it was another girl, I told him to wait as long as possible because I know she wouldn't like the news. When she found out it was a girl, she started sobbing and screaming. She was calling me a whore and demanded that I get out of her house. "Those girls are not ours. She's a whore, a slut. My son did not make those girls." She looked at me and said, "I let you get away with it the first time. I took you in as family. I allowed my son to believe he fathered that brat, but I will not allow it again." My husband was yelling at his mom and I got up and took my daughter and I ran to the car sobbing. I had to go no contact with my mother-in-law for the rest of my pregnancy. Until she decides to apologize for what she's done, we don't want to speak to her. A few weeks before my due date, my mother-in-law reaches out to my husband and says he misses her and my daughter. So he asked if we can go have dinner to try to mend the relationship. I said okay, but I didn't feel comfortable bringing my daughter, so I left her to my sister. At dinner, my husband asked his mom if she's ready to apologize. She said she's ready, but as soon as she gets the paternity test result, because my husband cannot be the father, and the fact that we have 2 girls is ridiculous. I proceed to grab my things because I'm not listening to this, when she grabs me and slaps me as hard as she can across the face. She calls me an effing whore and says I need to own up to my problems. I push her away trying to get to the door as fast as possible when she throws a snow globe at my head. I fall to the ground and that's when she starts kicking me. In my belly. My husband pushes her off of me and she breaks 2 fingers but takes me to the hospital where I receive 6 stitches. She then tried to press charges against my husband saying he assaulted her, but the hospital had more than enough proof to put her in jail. I sent her a gift in jail. The paternity results showing that her son is the father of my fiancé and I have been together for 6 years and engaged for 3. We decided to wait until I finished with my PhD program for us to get married. I picked a beautiful wedding hall that I was on the waiting list for 3 years to get into. My older sister also got engaged and is planning her wedding 6 months after mine. At our family dinner, she recently revealed that she's pregnant. My sister recently revealed that she was expecting and was going to push her wedding date forward. And she put me on the spot at the table and said, "I was really hoping we could take your venue. I really cannot stress myself too much with planning a wedding while going to maternity classes. And I think it's so beautiful and it would really mean a lot to me." I guess everyone is expecting me to say, yes, anything for my little sister. And when I looked at her, I had said, "I don't know. I have my heart really set on this venue." She started crying and she stormed out of the room. I tried defending myself, but my mom said, "You waited 3 years. Would have killed you to wait a few more months? When has your sister ever asked you for something?" My fiancé is super upset and wants to disinvite my sister. And my family is giving me the cold shoulder. So am I the asshole for not giving her the venue? My husband and I were expecting our first daughter and he suggested the name Tiffany and I fell in love. When I asked what made him pick it, he said he saw it in a movie. I didn't think much of it, and so a couple weeks later I called my sister-in-law to let her know we're going to name our daughter Tiffany. She was super surprised because she said she never wanted to name her child after her husband's high school girlfriend. I was really confused, but then she told me that they were together from sophomore year of high school to junior year of college. I knew he had a long-term relationship, but I never knew the girl's name. After hanging up, I confronted my husband and he tried blowing it off at first, but eventually admitted that it was true. I told him I'm refusing to name my daughter after his ex-girlfriend, and he told me it's too late, I'm overreacting, and I can't change my mind since I'm only due in 5 more weeks. I basically cried to get as much information as I can when he finally told me that she had contacted him because she was getting married and was having second thoughts. My husband admitted that talking to her made him realize he never stopped having feelings for her, but he loved me too. The reason he suggested the name was because he knew he couldn't leave me to be with her, so he wanted something to honor her with. Moving to a new city, I met this guy on Tinder. Our relationship was progressing really fast, and after a few weeks of dating, I found out I was pregnant. We went to the hospital where they confirmed I was pregnant, but very early on. My boyfriend was furious. He said he didn't sign up for this, and he knew people who could quote-unquote get rid of it. I told him I'm going through with this, with or without him. I didn't speak to him for a couple days when he reached out saying he wants to be part of his child's life. He moved in immediately so that we could start saving money. The morning after he moved in, he made breakfast for me. I was extremely nauseous and not in the mood to eat anything. He started yelling at me and saying it's for the baby, I can't be selfish. Less than 24 hours later, I was bleeding uncontrollably. He told me it was nothing and I shouldn't seek help. When the bleeding didn't stop, I went to the hospital where they told me I was no longer pregnant. I had no suspicion he had anything to do with it, so we stayed together. Weeks later, I finally kicked him out because of the abuse he was giving me and my dogs. I found out I was pregnant and I told my OB the situation, and that's when she told me I most likely didn't miscarry but was given something to dispel my pregnancy. My daughter is now 2, but still live in fear of seeing him in public.